Welcome everyone to this CELPIP Speaking Part 1 Giving Advice Analysis. Before we begin, I want to remind you that I will be using the CELPIP Speaking Part 1 Giving Advice Tips and Strategies Guide. You can find this guide in our CELPIP library in the speaking parts. And the one I'm using today is a part 1 given advice guide. And this is an instructional video that will explain to you the guide more clearly and how you can use it effectively to answer the question. I will also leave a link to that video in the description box. Now, I'm just going to go through the pages of the guide. And if you want to pause and read it, you can pause the video. The guide explains about reading the question and how you can prepare effectively. Some question notes which are important for this question. And the most important, how you can organize your response. Organizing the response is very important for lower levels so they can have a way to answer the questions. And for higher levels, because the higher level answers are usually very well organized and very well structured. So it's very important. And lastly, what factors which influence your score? What are the parts that are very important that you should know about? Okay, that's also important. Okay, now let's begin. Okay, everyone, let's read this part 1 giving advice question. So remember, preparation time is 30 seconds and speaking time 1 minute and 30 seconds. Okay, so your coworker's schedule got changed and now he has to work some weekends. He's not happy about it because it will affect his weekend routine. Advise him on some ways he could manage this work change. Okay, so that happens sometimes, right? Our schedule gets changed at work and we have some obligations. Maybe we have children and we need to take them to some activities, or we'd like to spend time with them, or some people need to go to church, or some people have weekend jobs. Okay? So, whatever the case, it looks like your coworker's schedule got changed. Now he has to work on weekends. It says he. And so we want to advise him about how he could manage this work change. Okay. So I will be using the guide, our speaking guide. This is very important. Organizing our response is very important, especially for higher levels, 7, 8, 9 or higher. We need to organize well. Okay, so I'm going to be following this format here. So first, let's introduce the question, okay? If I had to advise my coworker about how he could deal with this recent schedule change, I'd make some important suggestions. Okay, so directly, we need to start directly. And it's always better for higher levels to answer this question from a third person point of view. Okay, you could say, hello, Mark, maybe if you have a coworker named Mark. Hello, Mark, I'd like to advise you about how to deal with your recent schedule change, for example. Okay, we introduced the question. Now we're going to get to our first idea. First of all, I'd suggest that he should speak with his manager directly. and explain how the schedule change affects him negatively. Okay, that's important. So it's true. Maybe the manager doesn't know about his how the schedule affects him, right? Maybe they weren't sure about it. So, okay. So we need to explain. Now, maybe give an example or explanation here. Okay. So I'm giving an explanation. This would be great because it means we're explaining something. This would be great because maybe management is unaware of his strict weekend routine schedule, and perhaps they would reconsider. Okay, so then it's suggesting here that after making that change, then you can speak to the manager, and if you explain to them clearly what's the reason, then they would reconsider changing the weekend schedule for you. Okay, so that's a good idea. Now let's get to our second idea. Another important suggestion would be to look into whether he could change some of his weekend activities for the days he has off. Okay, so maybe those activities that he does on the weekend, maybe he can transfer them to his new days off, right? That's what it's saying here. Now it's giving an example here. For example, if his children have some special lessons on weekends, maybe they're also offered on his new days off. Okay, so they're offered, then he can transfer them for those new days off. So he should look into that. That's what it's saying here. Okay. All right, now let's get to a third idea. Last but not least, I think he could ask some of his colleagues if they'd be able to switch shifts with him on some weekends. Okay, very good idea as well. We could ask our colleagues about changing the schedule. All right. Maybe we need to explain a little bit more, right? And maybe he could offer them some incentives for switching, like buying them a coffee card or paying them some money, right? Yes, some incentives. Maybe give your coworkers some reason. If you take my shift, I'll give you, I don't know, what's good in, I think in Canada it would be maybe $50 for changing shifts. That could be. $50 would be good. Or maybe just buying them a coffee card. I think that's good too. But again, it depends on whether your colleagues want to work on the weekend. Okay. All right. So now let's get to our closing. Overall, I think the best advice is that he should be more transparent with his company and coworkers about his weekend schedule needs. So transparent, he should tell them clearly what is it? What is it that he needs on the weekends and he can't work on the weekends? And who knows? Maybe they'd be willing to lend him a hand. Okay. So I like this ending here. Who knows? Maybe they would be willing to lend him a hand. Lend him a hand. That's an expression. Anytime you can use an expression in your speaking, that's always higher levels. Okay. And so there we go. Now, of course, the important part is that we need to say this in a minute and a half, right? Now, usually 7 to 9s, they understand very clearly every idea. Let's remember that this is speaking, and for speaking, we don't really need really strong vocabulary or even strong sentence structure. It's very important. Let's just look here at our factors. Very important is providing a complete response. Providing a complete response for speaking part 1 means that you can start by introducing the question, give some ideas, and conclude the question. Actually, you could conclude with your last idea, last but not least. That's okay. You can say last but not least, I think. That would be okay for for any level. Personally, I think that adding an overall idea, like right here, just summarizing, I think that really is very good for higher levels, 9, 10, I would say. So that's about a complete response. Okay, and at least 2 ideas would be good. Of course, if you only give 2 ideas, then you have to explain each idea more. Okay, so that's why you can see here that the ideas are just idea and a short explanation or example. That's, I think, is better. But there's nothing wrong with talking to ideas and explaining them more and more if you can. I could speak about part 1. For example, here, first of all, I suggest that he should speak with his manager directly and explain how the schedule change affects him negatively. For example, he should tell his manager that he has some weekend classes that he's taken to upgrade his skills. And those classes right now, he can't change them because he has no other alternative. So this in this way, the manager would understand that he has a strict schedule on the weekend and then maybe they would be able to reconsider. So you see, I explained more that one. You can do that. If you can do that, then that's good. Okay. So we can do that, and that would be more. We don't need a third or even the overall. Okay. Now, secondly, about the sentence construction and grammar. Very important for 7, 8s, 9s. Let's stay around there. Is that we do not make any simple grammar mistakes, okay? This means anything to do with simple present, past, and future and pronouns, plural, singular, prepositions, any kind of simple grammar mistake, that's not good for 7 or higher. And secondly, if we could use some stronger grammatical forms, and here we used a lot of modals, right? Could deal with, should speak, okay, would reconsider, could change, could ask, would be able to switch, would be willing to, should be. Using modals, particularly for part 1, this will really improve your score. So we need to try to use that as well. We have some conditionals in here. See conditionals over here. I see a conditional over here. Conditionals are also good for explaining. Okay, and stronger sentence structure, like this sentence structure. Higher levels can do this better. Give a reason and perhaps like connecting well like that. And maybe, and at the bottom here, and who knows, maybe they'd be willing. That kind of sequencing and structuring is for higher levels, okay? Okay, I'm going to switch over to ideas and vocabulary. Now, of course, for ideas and vocabulary, we're just looking for, it's very easy to tell when something is explained in a simple manner. That's what level 5, 6s do, okay? Instead of saying this one here, for example. First of all, I'd suggest that he should speak with his manager. That could be level 6, okay? Or even 5, 5, 6 could say that, but it's just short. in terms of levels 7 and higher, we need to explain that more clearly. Speak with his manager directly and explain how the schedule change affects him negatively. That is more of an expression of 7 to 9. Now, I didn't really use any real strong vocabulary here. Colleagues, shifts, maybe incentives for switching shifts. That's a little bit higher. I really think that the expressions are very important. Lend him a hand. That's very important here. And anytime that you can use an expression in speaking, any part, because expressions are common in speaking, more in speaking than writing. And anytime that you can do that, or slang, I used like here. That's also good for ideas and vocabulary, and that will be higher, okay? So, in general, or the last part is fluency in speech. Now, that part I'm going to illustrate to you now. We need to try to keep speaking continuously. Not so fast. It's not about fast. It's about continuously. And also, we need to try to be clear in our speech. Now, pronunciation is not necessarily a problem in CELPIP. It's only when pronunciation affects understanding. If the word, we don't know what word it is that was said, then it's a problem. So then, speaking the answer fluently is important. As well, I think that we want to sound like we are naturally speaking or like a native speaker. And for that, we need to have some kind of fluctuations in our speech. It can't be so much like a computer or just one continuous sound, okay? Because there is emphasis or there is different fluctuations in speech, all right? And that's what I'm going to illustrate for you now. I'm going to speak this answer in 1 minute. Okay, we're going to speak this answer in 1 minute and a half. And while you listen, I want you to focus on how my speech fluctuates and connects. We need to have some pauses. It's not speed reading. And in this case, we are reading our example, but as well, we should be practicing speaking it. Okay? Okay, so let's listen. If I had to advise my coworker about how he could deal with his recent schedule change, I'd make some important suggestions. First of all, I'd suggest that he should speak with his manager directly and explain how the schedule change affects him negatively. This would be great because maybe management is unaware of his strict weekend routine schedule, and perhaps they would reconsider. Another important suggestion would be to look into whether he could change some of his weekend activities for the days he has off. For example, if his children have some special lessons on weekends, maybe they're also offered on his days off. Last but not least, I think he could ask some of his colleagues if they'd be able to switch shifts with him on weekends. And maybe he could offer them some incentives for switching, like buying them a coffee card or paying them some money. Overall, I think the best advice is that he should be more transparent with his company and coworkers about his weekend schedule needs. And who knows, maybe they'd be willing to lend him a hand. Okay, so I was able to speak that clearly in 1 minute and 15, it looks like. So everyone, let's remember that the level 7 to 9 or 9 or higher, they should be able to understand everything that we've written here. They should be able to understand it. They should be able to understand structure and grammar usage, and sentence structure. So, if we can understand it, then we should practice reading it and speaking it. And the best way to test your knowledge is, can you speak this answer in 1 minute and a half without reading it? Level 9 should be able to do that from knowledge, not from memory. Memory is for low levels, memorizing things. The level 9 or higher student, they should have this information from their knowledge. So that would be a good way for you to practice. Okay, everyone, let's practice. I would like to remind you that if you're looking for some more listening, reading, writing, or speaking CELPIP exam practice, then you should definitely subscribe to our CELPIP library. The CELPIP library has hundreds of examples of listening, reading, writing, and speaking, which will help you develop your score, whatever the score you need. Also, the library contains vocabulary, listening skills, reading skills, grammar, and writing skills exercises, which will really help you improve your general understanding of English and also for the exam. So, and you can purchase a 1 month pass or a 2 month or a 3 month subscription for a very low price. And of course, if you really enjoyed this content, then please like this video, share it, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. That way we will keep on producing more CELPIP analysis for your development. Have a great day.